I mentioned in the last part of this story that up until this point, I was still very firmly of the belief that everything that happened had a perfectly natural, albeit sinister, explanation. After Lisa told us the shocking news that Mark's body had been found outside of his coffin, and as a consequence, the church had buried him quickly without any family present, I wasn't really in the mood to tell her all the historical trivia we had learned earlier that day. Nate's great-aunt's ramblings and his mother's stories of union-busting factory owners just didn't seem relevant to our friend with her very real and very current grief. Nate, to my chagrin, seemed to feel differently, because as soon as Lisa had vowed to find out who or what was responsible for her brother's death, he started to spill out his aunt's whole story about disappearing people, or people drowning and turning up on dry land, or even being torn to pieces by unseen and unheard assailants. Lisa listened with rapt attention. "This is it," she exclaimed after Nate was finished. "This is exactly what happened to Mark. This thing, whatever was attacking people back in your great-aunt's day, it must be what attacked Mark." Lisa seemed energized for the first time in days. The change in her attitude almost made me suppress my objections, but I was too worried that she would get caught up in false hope, only to be crushed when it failed to manifest. I crossed the room and pulled the curtain shut over the darkening window. "Listen, Lisa," I said. "Nate's aunt did say all that stuff, but his mother gave us a much better explanation. You see, there was a lot of conflict between the family that owned the factory and the workers, and the factory owner had these private police who would kill people who made trouble. I tried to explain about the insatiable greed of the Anderson family and how they exploited their workers, but Lisa looked mutinous. She was having none of it. "Something cut off Nate's aunt's hand, and it was something so bad that she won't even talk about it after all these years," Lisa said with fury in her voice. "If it was just some hired thug or criminal, why not just say so? No, there is something worse up in Anders Mill, and when the water got low in the lake, it must have escaped." She turned to Nate. "Can we go see your aunt tomorrow? I want to talk to her." "Yeah, totally," Nate said enthusiastically. "Just when we go, you need to be careful how you talk to her. I think remembering this stuff might be upsetting for her." "I'm sure it is," Lisa said dryly. She was about to speak again when a huge crack of thunder shook the room. I'll admit, I jumped out of my chair. The whole situation had me so tense, and we hadn't been expecting a storm. Lisa went back to the window and drew back the curtains, followed by an almost instantaneous crack and boom of thunder. "No rain, though," she said. "I wonder if this will go on all night. You guys should probably sleep here." If Nate saw through the excuse, he didn't say anything. Lisa and I decided to share her bed, while she made Nate a pallet on the floor out of a sleeping bag and a few yoga mats. We all settled down to sleep with the curtains wide open. Lisa said she wanted to watch the storm. I'm not sure how long I dozed off for. It may have been a few hours. When I woke up, I had the impression that I had heard something, but I couldn't remember what it was. Then, next to me, I heard Lisa whisper, with the quietest breath of a sound possible, "Don't move. Don't say anything." I opened my eyes slightly and found myself lying on my side face to face with her. Lisa's bed was on the wall perpendicular to the wall with the window, about 4 feet away. Lisa had her back to the window, while I had my back to Nate and the rest of the room. I met Lisa's gaze and saw she was frozen stiff, without moving her lips or making a noise louder than a breath. She muttered, "There was someone at the window. I could see him in the mirror over my dresser." My heart felt like it dropped out of my chest, terrified that if I opened my eyes any wider would give me away. But unable to resist, I lifted my gaze to the large window that was just an arm's reach away. I only looked for a second, but it was enough. The shape of a man was at the window, backlit by the dim light from the far-off street lamp. He had both hands flat against the glass and his nose was practically smashed pressing up against the window to look in. I shut my eyes as tight as I could, as if me not seeing him would stop him from seeing me. "Did you lock the window after you came in?" Lisa whispered desperately. "I don't know," I tried to whisper without moving my lips, knowing my face was in full view of the man. How much could he see in our darkened room? Was he looking at me now? I can't remember. I could feel my body beginning to shake with terror as I fought back against making any movement that might reveal that I was awake. Did I lock the window? I was almost sure I hadn't. How long would it be before the man realized that all he had to do was pull outward, and it would be wide open? After an eternity, Lisa spoke again. "I think he's leaving," she said. I risked a peek and saw she was right. The man had turned and was walking away. I watched him go, feeling more relieved than I ever had in my life. My legs were shaking and the adrenaline which had been uselessly pumping through my body was making my muscles feel like jello. I could see Lisa watching the man retreat in the mirror. We lay in silence for a long time. I didn't want to move or go back to sleep in case the man came back. After he had been gone for about 10 minutes, Lisa slipped quietly from the bed to the floor, keeping below the level of the windowsill. She reached her hand carefully up and engaged the lock that was at the bottom of the window. She slipped back into bed and we laid without sleeping until the sun started to lighten with the dawn a few hours later. Once it seemed to be good and truly light outside, we could hear sounds of Lisa's mother walking around in the kitchen. Lisa got up and risked a look out of the window. There was nothing. We woke Nate up and told him what happened. He was the one who pointed out that there were 2 handprints left behind. "What did the man look like?" Nate asked. "I don't know," I replied hesitatingly. I didn't want to look too long, but he was big, and I think kind of pale. "He was definitely pale," said Lisa. "I could watch his reflection in the mirror. He was so pale I could see a lot of his face, even though there wasn't much light. He was pretty big and his skin and his face were kind of strange. Like his face was fat almost, but he wasn't fat himself. I don't know how to describe it." "It's like his face and his hands were swollen," Nate said. I looked at him with surprise. "Yes, that's it exactly. How did you know? Could you see him too?" Lisa replied. "And he had a white mustache and thin straight hair." "Yes." Nate looked thoroughly freaked out. "I think I saw him the other day when I was looking at the hand mirror Amy brought back from the lake. He was in the reflection." I was shocked. I didn't realize Nate had seen anything so specific when he thought he glimpsed something reflected over his shoulder in my room. Lisa looked uncomfortable. She reached out to her bedside table when I realized the compact she had found at the lake had been sitting there this whole time. "Don't," I whispered as she moved to open it, but she ignored me. She pressed the latch and it popped open with a click. I couldn't believe it still had a working spring inside after all these years. Lisa slowly opened the lid and looked into the little mirror inside. "Nothing," she said. She passed us the compact and we all looked into it. It was just an ordinary-looking mirror. Nate closed it and handed it back to Lisa, who put it in her purse. "We need to go see your aunt, Nate. She's the only one who seems to actually have some real information here." Nate and I agreed, and after deciding that she would probably be up for the early bird breakfast at the retirement home, we got in his car and drove across town. We did not expect the pandemonium we found when we entered the home. There were 2 ambulances parked in front of the door and a crowd of people in the lobby across the room. Someone was screaming while paramedics tried to restrain her. "Father Bruni! We need Father Bruni! Please! You have to get Father Bruni! Maria! Maria!" Nate gasped and pushed forward through the crowd. It was his grandmother, and she was completely hysterical. "Nonna! Nonna, it's okay, I'm here, Nonna! What's wrong?" Nate was trying desperately to get her to look at him or respond, but she continued to shout for Father Bruni. "Are you related to this woman?" one of the paramedics asked. "She's my grandmother," Nate said in a panic. "What's wrong with her?" "She's had a shock and she's very upset. We've given her a sedative, but it's taking some time to kick in," the man replied. "Father Bruni, she won't rest. She won't rest without Father Bruni," Nate's grandmother continued to shout, but her rantings were losing some steam. 2 of the paramedics managed to get her into a seated position in a wheelchair one of the nurses from the home had brought over. Sophia grabbed at the closest paramedic shirt and continued on, more quietly but just as desperately. "They wander. You know they wander and they don't rest. They don't rest if you don't do it right. You have to tell Father Bruni." The paramedic, cool and professional, reassured her that we would certainly tell Father Bruni and that everything would be taken care of. He was telling her that she needn't worry about anything when the sedative finally put Sophia to sleep. "What happened?" Nate demanded. "What got her so upset? Who's Father Bruni?" "Well, I don't know who Father Bruni is," replied the paramedic. "Some priest, I guess. But as to why she's so upset, well, son, I'm sorry to tell you her sister passed away at some point in the night. The nurses here told her this morning and she became hysterical. We'll take her to the hospital just to be safe, but I think she's just shocked by the news." Nate looked stunned. "Her sister?" he croaked. "Her sister Maria?" "Yes," said the paramedic. "I'm very sorry to be the one to tell you." "How?" Nate choked out. "It looks like she fell or slipped in her tub and hit her head. It's a real danger when you get to be that age. I'm sorry." Nate muttered his thanks and turned away from the paramedics, who were taking Sophia out to the ambulance. Nate muttered his thanks and turned away from the paramedics, who were taking Sophia out to the ambulance. He came back over to us and I didn't know what to say, so I just threw my arms around him and hugged him. He stood still without hugging back. "Zia Maria," he said. "Nate," I said tentatively, "who is Father Bruni? Do you know him?" He shook his head no. "I do," said Lisa to my surprise. "Father Francis Bruni, except he's not Father Bruni anymore. He's Bishop Bruni. He's the one who buried Mark." Nate tensed by my side. His eyes narrowed and his expression turned stony. "We're going to go talk to him right now. Someone is going to give us some real answers here, because I don't believe for a second that Zia Maria fell by accident." Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So guys, I need to let you know of a change in my upload schedule. Some of you may know that I was recently in the hospital. I'm not going to go into why I was there or what happened, but I'm okay. But my doctor said that I need to take care of myself a little better, and because of that, I will be cutting back on how often I upload my videos. I'm really sorry about this, and don't worry, I'm still going to be uploading 2 or 3 times a week, whichever video schedule I choose, or if I just decide to do it randomly. But unfortunately, that happened. But anyways, guys, like I said before, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.